It's back to the whole good morning Vietnam days, but obviously much nicer scenario than that. So my name's Simon Begler, and I welcome you all to another Active in Redbourn weekly call. Excuse me. As always, I do want to thank everybody for donating and helping to keep these calls free, because it's so important and it's so generous of them. Those people include Jan Brown, Adam and Lulu Shapton, Sally Bartlett, Doris Cheetham, Rachel Mackey and Brian Gunson, who was a guest last week. And also, I'd also like to thank the Parish Council again for giving us a grant from September onwards. As I've mentioned, I think the last couple of weeks, we will be continuing these calls to the end of the year, whatever happens with the lockdown. The call is now available live on the Redbourners Facebook page, if we can get the technology working, and afterwards should be found as a recording there and on our website. Now, as in previous weeks, everyone bar today's speaker is on mute, so you can make as much noise as you want to. The dogs can bark, you can put the kettle on, you can chat away to your heart's content, because no one else can hear you. That said, we will open up the call at the end for some questions if there are any, so we'll wait till the end on that one. Now, I looked back to the calendar this morning, and amazingly, I thought this is the 12th call we've had. So it's incredible that we've had so many, really, going back over so long a period. The first one was actually held back on the 29th of April. So it seems so long ago. And to paraphrase Charles Dickens, not just because I've just finished reading A Tale of Two Cities, so much has happened and so little has happened. So all this time since 29th of April seems incredible. That being the case, excuse me, we thought it was high time that we took a look at how these calls came into being in the first place, which is really the story of Active in Redbourn itself. So I'm delighted to be talking to my good friend and colleague Ivan Hickmott today, whose idea it was in the first place.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ivan. As always, that will be followed by Will Gibbs, our wonderful vicar, with his thought for the week. Now, every week after Will's thought for the week, I think I wish I had more time to talk to him about what he said and generally. And of course, today, I'm going to give myself that opportunity. So after Will's thought for the week, we'll just be continuing with the chat between the two of us, which will be great. So without further ado, Ivan, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. My heart is pumping furiously with nerves at the thought of talking to you, Simon.
Well, I hope I'm not that intimidating, Ivan.
Not at all, not at all.
Good stuff.
I'm teasing you.
So as I said in the little brief intro there, it's a long overdue we look at Active in Redbourn itself, really, and the chain of events that led to these weekly calls happening in the first place. So would you mind if I started asking about sort of Active in Redbourn's roots, how we got started, perhaps why we got started, and what the original objectives were?
Sure, I'll do my best, and I'll try and be brief. Do stop me if I start rambling on for too long, Simon. A couple of things by way of background. I personally am a huge believer in the value of community and what folks can do at the grassroots if they're given the chance to do that. So I guess the story of Active in Redbourn is hopefully a story that could apply in other situations for other potential or actual community groups. I've lived in the village for 37 years and I really got to know the village much more thoroughly when I was a parish councillor in my then stint. I'm a regular runner and I'd like to keep myself fit. I walk my dogs 2 to 3 hours a day. And a couple of years back I began to have the germ of an idea that maybe there's something we could do across the village which would serve to create a healthier lifestyle and habits and bring together our residents across the community. I knew that we'd already got fantastic clubs and societies, all of which are doing a great job in their individual areas. I just had a feeling that we could do more across the board. So I mentioned it to a few folk, and we got together, and what I've come to know as the Air Gang met for the first time in the spring of last year, 2019. The gang has now got, it's about 20 strong. We meet monthly, 10 or 12 of us. The group, and everything we've done is down to the group, I have to say. Many of the group are new to volunteering. They didn't know one another. But we quickly landed on this notion, a vision, if you like, for Redbourn, that we saw a future in which Redbourn could be, should be, the healthiest village in England. The healthiest village in England. And that's something that we stuck to as our long-term vision. Who knows whether we ever get there, but we're going to keep trying.
certainly the loveliest village in England, isn't it? As I'm sure we'd all agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So healthiest village in England. So how, I guess the obvious question is, how are we going to get there in terms of how we're supporting people? So what's the sort of plan to get to meet that objective, if you like?
Well, let me begin my answer by just defining who are we trying to support.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to say that Active in Redbourn is for Redbourners and provided by Redbourners. So it's a Redbourn-based initiative. So the target population is actually all 5,500 people who live in the village. Whatever their age, whatever their background and history, those are the people that we're aiming to support, to create and promote healthier lifestyles. We've had many a conversation amongst the gang around, well, actually most people in Redbourn are fairly active or very active and are well catered for by existing groups, and we had no intention of getting in the way of what other bodies are doing. But we do want to help those groups to promote a healthier lifestyle so as people can become even more active. But the group of people that I think we most care about and want to help, it's difficult to give it a clear definition. Let me call them the less active. They're the people we want to target especially. And I came across, if you'll let me indulge you with a statistic, which I don't often do, I came across a statistic for some public data, publicly available data, which said approximately 21% of the population of St Albans could be categorised as what I'm defining as less active, which is a big number. If you translate that into Redbourn terms, that's well over 1,000 people who may have impaired mobility, suffer from diabetes, obesity, suffer from visual or hearing impairments, perhaps have a mental health condition. Amongst our elderly folk, we obviously have our cases of dementia, people who are living alone with long-term health conditions, depression. So there's actually a very sizable community, and I think that's the group that we would really like to think we could make a difference with. Have I answered your question, I wonder, Simon?
I think so. Yeah. So what have we done then? Can you remind people of what we've done so far and what we're up to now in terms of actually helping that group that you just talked about?
When we try and define what we do, what we spend our energies focused on, it really comes into three categories. These are projects. That's one. Number two, fundraising and awareness campaigns. And thirdly, sort of new initiatives. And I'll give you a couple of illustrations for each of them. So in terms of projects, we've been campaigning for a year and fundraising to have 2 water fountains put in place in the village, to install 2 water fountains. We've revived the concept of the Redbourn Mile around the common. We're talking to the Playing Fields Trust about introducing a perimeter track at the leisure centre as part of their wider plans to further develop the facilities in and around the leisure centre. So those are some examples of what we're doing in the area of projects. When it comes to fundraising, we do what we can to support already existing major events and play our part in helping them to be successful, whether that's the Fete de Velo, which takes place every summer, the Fun Run. We had our own Conquer-thon last October, which was a fun day, which we would like to repeat this year. It obviously has to defer into 2021. And as an awareness campaign, we're just in the process of finalising a petition to introduce a safe cycle and pathway between Redbourn and St Albans, which has long been campaigned for. And when I last looked at the petition count, I think we were well over 1,700. So there's an example of an awareness campaign. In terms of new initiatives, these very calls, these community calls, are an example of something we're doing that's new and different. And another example might be the introduction of health walks around the common. Up until the lockdown, we were doing weekly health walks for a group of 10 to 15 people who had an enjoyable stroll around the common, and then for most a cup of coffee and coffee on the common to follow. So that's what we've been doing, but of course things have changed as a result of lockdown, to say the least.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, obviously so much going on there, Ivan, and it's great that all this activity is happening, but how has COVID-19 and the lockdown affected the plans? And I guess it'd be interesting to know what you think we've learned from COVID-19 and the way we've had to change our behaviour and activities.
Well, it certainly it was a shock to the system for Active in Redbourn, because in effect our entire 2020 programme was brought to a grinding halt. But we shook ourselves down and thought about, well, what could we do to respond to the crisis and still be helping the community and be consistent with what we set ourselves as our original objectives. And they survived. I'm not sure where the ideas came from or where they started, but somewhere in the gang came this notion that we should be running perhaps a community call. And I won't say much other than that. This is our 12th call, as you say, Simon. I think they've been successful. We're reaching out to folk who are perhaps struggling during the crisis. I hope we bring some pleasure at least once a week to people, and also bring a sense of connection to something, to the village and to other people. The other initiative that we've introduced, which I guess was an experiment when we started, but has proven to be more long-lasting than that, is what we call Live Well with Air, which is a series of online classes run through Facebook. We run 30-minute yoga and Pilates sessions once a week, and I would never have believed that after a few weeks of these sessions I'd be able to say that we've had sessions on yoga, laughter, learning how to dance, Latin and ballroom, singing, how to breathe properly, what are the right herbs to be taking. It's amazing what you can do. And we would never have thought of any of those things unless we'd have been provoked into action by the crisis. So I think that's the learning would be: dust yourself down, think about what you can do differently, and get on with it, really. And we still found time to do the cycleway petition as well.
Oh, yes, which hopefully we'll get an update on quite soon. So there's so much going on, Ivan. It's brilliant, I think, what Active in Redbourn wants to do and is doing. I'm sort of inclined to ask what the dreams and hopes for the future are. So all these wonderful things are going on. What about the future? What does the future hold for it, and what do you hope that Active in Redbourn can achieve?
Well, one thing we've learned through the lockdown is the value of working with other community groups. So we got to know and have worked closely with the care group, and that's been a joy, and I can see that continuing. I'm going to say something that might seem a bit odd, but in terms of thinking of the future, I passionately hope and believe that the sound of laughter will still permeate the things that Active in Redbourn do. We've always said that whatever we do must bring a sense of fun to the party. It's wonderfully energising, is laughter, and I think that's an important characteristic. I hope and believe that the gang, as I've called it, can increase in numbers and we can do new things. The Active in Redbourn team is our creative engine room, but it's not just about thinking of new things to do, it's about getting things done. I think that the lockdown crisis has also taught us that there's a demand for, and we should try and respond to providing more support in and around well-being.
Yeah.
So I think watch this space in that regard. We need to finish off the projects that we started, the water fountains and the Redbourn Mile. But above all, we need to drive towards our original vision, which is that we want the healthiest and happiest village in the UK, the healthiest and happiest community around.
Brilliant. Well, Ivan, we're on the way, aren't we?
I hope so. No, I believe so. I do.
Well, thank you very much for that. And it's really just great to learn all the things that we're doing and all the things we've done and the plans we have for the future. So thank you very much. Are you happy to take some questions at the end, by the way?
Of course I am.
You are?
Be glad to.
Super.
May not know the answer, but I'm glad to.
Lovely. Okay, thanks, Ivan. So, as I said in the intro, I'm going to be talking to Will next, but we have a little surprise for you all. So, unannounced at the beginning deliberately, the wonderful young Chris Emmel, famous amongst other things for appearing upside down in a recent Zoom call, and to Ivan's comment about having fun and laughter, it did generate quite a lot of that, is going to read us a short poem. So, Chris, are you still out there? Hopefully he is. I'm just waiting for him to respond. Chris, are you out there? I think we've lost him. So, Will, I'm going to come to you now, if that's okay. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Simon. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Hopefully that wasn't a dry cough, so I start to be cool with. But thank you for alerting me. So what I'd like to do, Will, as I said at the beginning, is perhaps start with your thought for the week, and then move into a sort of a more general chat if we can. So the floor is yours, and we're all, as always, looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Sorry, the other phone is going just at the wrong moment.
It's all happening today.
It is. Bear with me. There we go. I'm trying to just delete that. There we go. Lovely. So I'll offer my thought for the day, and then we can chat, Simon. So good morning to everyone, and happy St. Swithin's Day. Today is the feast of St. Swithin. You may not have realised it, but it is. So I thought I'd say a little bit about the story of his life and why he is remembered, and then go on to suggest what we might do with that information, how we might respond. The story of St. Swithin is like that of many saints, combining a number of hard facts with many legends. It's sometimes hard to separate the fact and the fiction. The facts are that he was born in Winchester around 800, becoming a trusted counsellor to the Saxon kings Egbert and Ethelwulf, and was made Bishop of Winchester for the last 10 years of his life. When he died in 863, he was buried in front of the west door of the Saxon Old Minster. Here he rested for over 100 years, all of which is not especially remarkable. So how did he become famous? Well, when Ethelwold, the reforming Bishop of Winchester, set up a new community of Benedictine monks at Old Minster 100 years later, in around 964, he decided they needed a new purpose-made patron saint, someone to inspire the monks as they prayed. So Bishop Swithin's bones were dug up and placed in a precious reliquary inside the building, given by King Edgar, an act later seen to be rather against the saint's wishes. In the 11th century, Swithin's relics were on the move again, this time into a huge new cathedral built by the Norman invaders. His Anglo-Saxon reliquary was carried with great ceremony to its new position behind the high altar, where it stayed until 1450. His tomb became a major site for pilgrims, with many seeking and claiming to be healed from illness. A short tunnel, known as the Holy Hole, allowed them to crawl right under his shrine to get as close as possible to his miraculous healing powers. In 1476, a new, even larger shrine was inaugurated at the far end of the building. It must have been an incredible sight, festooned with gifts of silver, gold and jewels offered by grateful pilgrims. So what legends are told about him? Well, one legend claims that Swithin tutored the young Alfred the Great. Another says that he built the first stone bridge over the River Itchen, which runs through Winchester. His most famous miracle tells of a simple act of human kindness to a poor woman. When crossing the bridge, she was jostled and dropped her basket of eggs. The saint took pity on her and made her broken eggs whole. One source claims that when Swithin died, he asked to be buried out of doors, where the feet of ordinary men could pass over him. This, and a possible mistranslation of a medieval text may have given rise to the story that when the saint's bones were moved inside the Old Minster on his feast day, the 15th of July 971, a terrible storm broke out, lasting for 40 days and nights. This is the basis of the popular belief that if it rains on the 15th of July, it will rain for 40 days. Well, the cult of St. Swithin and his shrine came to an abrupt end during the Reformation, when King Henry VIII seized control of the church in this land and declared himself as head of the Church of England. On the 21st of September 1538, under cover of darkness at 3 in the morning, the King's commissioners smashed it apart and stole all the valuables. 3 years later, a workman blocked up that holy hole. Nothing remains of his once great shrine. All you can see if you visit the impressive Winchester Cathedral these days is a modern memorial that marks the spot. So what do we make of this story? Well, we might keep a keen eye on the weather today. We are British and obsessed with the weather anyway, let's face it. But let's not get too carried away. I think we've had a tiny bit of drizzle, so I'm not sure whether that counts or not. But don't worry. I don't think saints are very effective barometers for the weather. And at the end of the day, one person's good weather is another person's bad weather, and vice versa. Much as we might want it to stay dry for the next 40 days, for the summer break and any holidays we might be taking, our farmers and gardeners will be worried if we don't get some rain in this period. I also think that the story of Swithin is a sad one in some ways, being dug up and moved several times. I can't think that is a good idea. And when we lay our loved ones to rest, let them rest there, in one place with dignity, fondly remembered and the grave lovingly tended, but left to rest in peace. At the end of the day, these are just mortal remains, and their true resting place is with God in eternal life. But what I do like about Swithin is that even today, 1200 years after he was born, he is still remembered. Remembered for his wise counsel, his love of God, his humility, his acts of kindness. Whatever our understanding of saints, and despite the blurred lines between myth and fact for many of them, if we could live in such a way that we were devotedly remembered even in 100 years, never mind 1200, then we would have done well to have been inspired by St. Swithin and followed his example.
Absolutely, Will. By the way, how do you know? Do you sort of know all this history, by the way, or do you research it? I'm just wondering because you have such a wonderful amount of knowledge every week. It's quite extraordinary.
A bit of a mixture, Simon.
Okay.
I do try and fact check because obviously that's important. But having served in the church for a number of years, some of it I carry those sort of the strange things that one remembers. But obviously you need to make sure that you are remembering it correctly, and so I do just double check that it is the right things I'm remembering. And
oh, wonderful! Thank you.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, listen. Before I ask you a couple of more questions, I just have to say to all those that wanted to hear the surprise poem, I just saw the wonderful Chris Hamill wandering around my garden, waving frantically. So, Chris, if you are out there, we'll delay that to next week if that's okay. Something obviously went wrong, not a problem at all. So don't worry about it, and you can rest in peace and go and have a nice cup of tea now.
Simon,
quite funny.
Simon, that's okay. Me and technology are like oil and water. I'll see you next week.
I know, Chris. Tell me about it.
Oh.
Right, Will. So moving on then, as I said in my intro, every week you say very interesting and thought-provoking things, and then normally we have to sort of hand it straight on to someone else. It's great that we don't have to do that
absolutely.
Today.
Yeah.
One thing I picked up from all that, and there were lots of things that were interesting there, and I have to confess I don't think I knew any of it, frankly. So I feel quite guilty about that. You talked about healing powers.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about that generally, about not just about St. Swithin, but what you feel about the power of healing and how it can help us in this terrible time we're having?
Yeah, sure. I do believe in the power of healing. I do believe in the importance of prayer. But what I would say is that I think healing looks it's a rather varied picture. It looks different for different people. I think if everybody who ever became ill, we expected them suddenly miraculously to be better the minute, I think that's probably unrealistic, but I think healing and wholeness are quite intimately related, and sometimes I have known in people I've met and ministered alongside, people whose prognosis was really poor, and actually it was quite worrying and frightening, but actually against all odds and defying medical sort of advice or opinion, actually have got better. And I think sometimes there's something about being at peace and being sort of resolved about somebody's situation. I think sometimes knowing that other people are caring and supporting for that person in a time of trouble and anxiety can be hugely reassuring, and sometimes I think it just can't be explained. I think we don't always we can't always demythologize everything. I think that there are things beyond our understanding about how our human bodies work. I think science and technology and the advances in our understanding and appreciation of all of that is just fantastic and wonderful. But there's still a lot we don't know. And I guess for me at the moment, I think healing and support and care it takes on many forms, and I'm just very mindful of that at the moment with this pandemic, and I've just, as I said before, just bowled over by the way that as a village people have been caring for each other and supporting each other, and there have been people who've been very poorly with coronavirus and thankfully have gradually regained strength, but it's taken a long time, and some still are struggling to return to the health they enjoyed before. It is worrying. So those are some thoughts I have about healing and wholeness.
Oh, thanks, Will. In terms of your obviously the church reopening and so on, how is that going now? And is it opening up more, as it were, than it was, or what's the latest situation?
Yeah, obviously the sort of government announcements were very welcome. It's been heartbreaking to have the church closed. We've been able to reopen for individuals to visit for some time now, and that's just been lovely to see a steady stream of people coming in and out of the church and visiting the churchyard, and just lovely to see that steady flow of people. But we're working through a program of sort of phased reintroduction of public worship. So we say morning and evening prayers every day, every weekday, Monday to Friday. Morning prayers at 9:30 and evening prayer at 5 o'clock, and that started last week. We've got our first weekday communion service tonight at 7:30. And then on the 26th of July, we'll be reintroducing Sunday services. So our 8 o'clock communion service will be in church. The problem we've got with all the guidance and so on, which we absolutely will adhere to very strictly and carefully to make sure that everybody is as safe as we can possibly manage, is we've got a lovely 900-year-old church, but it's got a lot of fixed points in terms of pews and pillars and so on, and we need to be able to maintain good, safe flow, pedestrian flow, and 2-meter social distancing. So it does mean our capacity is significantly reduced. So it's been easy to begin with the smaller services first and build back up. But the 9:30 service on our Sunday morning, which we're delighted is well attended, presents more of a challenge. So what we're going to do, Simon, is we're going to offer that as an open air service starting on the 26th of July. We're hugely fortunate. We've got a lovely lawn area at the front of the church.
Absolutely.
which is within our grounds, so we're in sort of control of it and can manage that space and make sure that everything's done correctly and well. So we're encouraging people to come along at 9:30, bring a deck chair or a picnic blanket. We'll have some markings on the lawn so people can see exactly where to space so that they can be kept safe and at a suitable distance apart. We're going to have an open-air service, not too long, just because I think people will want to just enjoy that. We're going to encourage people to bring along some refreshments, perhaps a flask or whatever, and stay and mix and socialise afterwards and so on. So that, for the moment, will be the best way we can offer our 9:30 service. The 8 o'clock service, a bit earlier in the morning, too early to be outside, and it tends to be a smaller congregation anyway, so we'll be inside church for that. And I think the combination of those two will work really well. This time of year sort of gives us that opportunity. We'll obviously need to review that in the autumn and take stock and see how that's going and so on, and at which point we may need to move the 9:30 service back into church, possibly offering it in back-to-back services, two sort of sittings, if you like, with space and time in between, just to clean down the church and then invite another group to come in, so that we can kind of manage it in two batches, if you like. So those are the sort of plans that we're working really hard on at the moment. We're about to send out quite a detailed letter in the next couple of days to our congregational members, and it will also be on our website, that just sort of sets out those thoughts with some guidance so that people know what to expect and how